Hey everyone, so I just had the privilege of finishing up a session with one of the smartest holistic health practitioners that I've ever met. And what we went over, so what I'm going to show you the videos for today, is our ELDOA session. So if you've never heard of ELDOA, which I assume most people probably have not, it is kind of like a system of stretching and natural decompression for your spine. So it's commonly used to fix a lot of disc issues, different spinal issues, nerve pain, things like that. So the idea is to get into positions that kind of look like stretching, but what you're doing is positioning your body so that you naturally decompress the spine. So if you picture the spine, you have your spinal column that runs down and there's a few different curves throughout, and in between all of the bones or vertebrae are your discs. So basically the positions that you're trying to create in ELDOA take the two vertebrae and they kind of stretch them and open up some space and decompress so that the discs between your vertebrae can get some fluid and nutrients and blood flow and recreate good spacing so that, you know, for a lot of people with back pain, over years and years of just a compressed spine, so being, you know, stiff in certain spots and never taking time to decompress, there's a lot of like squeezing onto these discs that kind of starves them of nutrients and water, and they kind of start to dry out and cause some issues and are more prone to things like disc bulges and herniations and ruptures and tears. So ELDOA is a fantastic thing for anyone to do to naturally decompress your spine and just, you know, fix things like posture and alleviate pain. So in a second, I'm going to show you all of the videos from my session with Brian. So we work basically from the thoracic spine, so we work in your middle back, and then we start to work down to the low back, and I will explain each stretch and each position so you could try some of these things at home. Okay, so the first ELDOA that we completed was for T6, T7, so T being your thoracic spine. So this is kind of more in between your shoulder blades, like in your mid-back. So that's the area where we're going to try to create decompression. So what Brian is coaching me to do, you start with your legs kind of sitting in a crisscross position, trying to push your knees down. So you can see I'm having a little bit of trouble. My knees are high. Brian is coaching me to push my knees down. And then you kind of put your hands in like this prayer position starting at your chest. And you want to spread your fingertips so you don't want your fingers to be touching. And keeping that position, you want to push your fingertips up as high as you possibly can, sitting up as tall as you can, while keeping your feet on the ground and pushing your knees towards the floor. So Brian's going to keep coaching me to bring my hands back and try to get them further up over my head and just kind of look down towards the floor and keep my head from poking forward. So I want to keep it underneath of my hands. So I'm going to hold this position for 1 minute, and then you'll see at the end, Brian's going to coach me to come out of it very slowly. So we're going to hold for a little bit longer, trying to breathe, sit up tall, fingertips up, push the knees down, and then you'll see me come out of this position slowly. Moving on to the next one, we worked on, so one vertebrae down, we went to T7, T8. So again, T being your thoracic spine. So in this position, we're going to try to keep your feet and your knees, you know, you could see Brian just coached me to try and touch my knees together. So I'm going to try to open my hands. So if you look at my wrists, I'm trying to extend my wrist back and open my hands and spread my fingertips apart as much as I possibly can. I'm trying to keep my knees and my feet close together, and my knees are bent in about a 90-degree position. And I'm trying to sit up as tall as I can, and about a 45-degree angle off the shoulder, I'm going to push my palms out. You know, you can see I'm almost in the shape of like a Y, the letter Y. So that's how you want to drive your palms. So open hand, push your palms at that 45-degree angle off the shoulder and drive them away. So I was having trouble keeping my knees together, so Brian stuck my mask, my surgical mask, in between my knees to squeeze to try to help me remember to keep my knees together. And I'm going to try to keep sitting up with my chin tucked in and my eyes down while I'm sitting up tall, driving the hands away, then I come out slowly. Moving one more vertebrae down, we're now going to move into T8, T9, so getting down towards the bottom of what's considered your thoracic spine. Okay, in this position, so if you can see, Brian's doing a pretty good job keeping his feet flat on the floor. I am having trouble, so you can see my toes are elevated a little bit. So you want to keep your knees bent about 90 degrees and your feet on the floor if you can. So now your knees are going to be separated. So similar position as before, except now my hands are going to go straight up. So same thing with that open hand, bent wrist position, driving with my palms up towards the ceiling. I'm trying to get my arms as straight as I can, sitting up as tall as I can with my hands as high as I can, and Brian's trying to help me push my toes into the floor to try to get my feet a little flatter. So this is decompressing the T8, T9 vertebrae, which is up in the mid-back. So we're going to keep reaching. Brian's trying to help me push to sit up a little taller and drive my hands up and keep my head back with my eyes down and keep breathing and just keep driving those hands up and the top of my head, trying to sit up taller and keep my knees bent 90 degrees with my feet flat on the floor. And he's going to try to keep looking for me to keep my spine straight and not be hunched forward at all, which is a difficult position to hold. So you hold all of these for about 1 minute in length. And it's very important to come out of the position slowly, which at the end you'll see me slowly drop my hands back down. You don't want to just drop out of the position too quick because it'll actually create more tension. Okay, now moving into the lumbar spine. So your lumbar spine is the bottom, so at the base of your spine in connection to your hip. So this decompression position we're getting into is L4, L5. So this is a commonly injured area on people with low back pain. So my knees, as you can see, are bent 90 degrees, and now I'm externally rotating my hips and turning my knees out, so they're kind of falling down off to the side. So Brian's coaching me, so my feet, I'm going to be on the sides of my feet, so my hips and my ankles are all the way turned out, and I'm trying to pull my toes up towards myself. So then I'm getting in a similar position with my arms. So same thing, open hand, flex wrist, and I'm trying to lift them up as high as I can with my arms as straight as possible and sitting up really tall. So this is going to decompress the low back. So this is really a hard position to hold, especially if you're tight in the hips and you have low back problems. So just start slow and get in the best position that you can. So as you can see, my chin's kind of tucked down and I should be looking down while sitting up tall and pushing my arms up. So I want my spine to be really straight and I'm not like hunched over with this little turtle shell for a back. And I'm going to come out slowly here. Lastly, we have a really important couple of positions here. So Brian and I are actually going to tackle basically the whole base of your spine. So L5S1, which is your last vertebrae in your spine. So S1 being the connection to your sacrum, which is your tailbone. So now we're working at the bottom. So if you have low back pain, this is the vertebrae, you know, the two vertebrae in the disc that take the most stress usually for people. So this is where the part of your spine that really takes the brunt of everything that happens to you. So it really eats a lot of impact and compression. So this is a commonly injured area for a lot of people who experience low back pain. So what me and Brian are trying to do right now is really unlock my SI joints. So a lot of people watching this video might be pretty familiar with SI joint pain. So, you know, if you picture your low back at the bottom, off to the sides, you know, the back, you know, the bulk of the back of your hip, those are your SI joints, okay? And what we're trying to do is create space in the SI joints. So if you look at me here, I'm pushing my hands overhead just like I am when I was sitting down, but I have one knee that's bent 90 degrees with my feet flat on the wall. So my hips are against the wall. I'm as close to the wall as I could be. And I'm moving my leg around a little bit. So I started with my leg straight in the air. I moved it out to my left side. Now I'm pulling it directly over my right foot. So I'm trying to create space on the whole left side of my hip. So I'm trying to space out my SI joint and create some space in that hip joint, which is where people who have sciatic pain and nerve pain that runs down your leg, these would be great positions for you to get into and stretch. So I'm going to do the same thing on my right side here. So now my left leg is flat on the wall. Brian's getting my knee to be bent about 90 degrees. So you can see he just told me to line up my heel with my other knee. Okay, so if you picture that as a visual, line up one heel with the other knee. So Brian's making sure I internally rotate my hip that is straight, so my leg that's straight. So I'm going to point those toes in And this is the position when your leg is straight in the air. So now I'm decompressing my right SI joint. So you might feel a big hamstring stretch. I'm going to pull my toes towards me. Okay, Brian is probably telling me that I'm doing everything incorrectly, but I'm trying to keep my arms straight, keep them over my head with my hands open. You can see my hands are getting tired, so they're starting to close, and I'm having trouble keeping my wrist bent back like that. So you're going to get a lot of stretch in your upper body here as well. Okay, so ideally my chin is tucked. I'm looking down at my legs, and I'm trying to keep my butt on the floor while I'm pushing my legs up. So now I'm going to come out a little bit. So you start at the top, then you come out. And then in a few seconds, I'm also going to come in and place my right foot over my left foot. So Brian's trying to fix my hands, try to keep your hands straight, push them up high. I feel a lot of stretch going on here. Brian's trying to fix my knee, and then I'm going to bring my right foot back towards the inside. And this is all unlocking that right SI joint, which is where I commonly have pain. So this felt really good afterwards. So I'm creating space and pushing into that hip. So here's that last position where the foot is set over the other foot. So one knee bent about 90 degrees, the other leg really straight. And this whole time my hands are opening up, so you get a good forearm stretch, open hand, wrist stretch. And then you're going to see me come out of this position slowly. So we're going to hold for a few seconds. So this is what the position looks like when your feet are stacked. And then eventually I'm going to, so make sure you always come out of the position slowly. And then I'm going to end up coming down and rolling my feet off of the wall. So before we finish up, so you can see I am resting. That was actually quite tough to hold that position for a minute. So all positions are held about 30 seconds to a minute being more beneficial. So what we're going to move into last is just unlocking that L5, S1, so the base of your spine. So what I did prior was the SI joints, so more off to the side of your low back. Now we're going to go right after the low back itself. So think dead center of your low back. So what you're going to try to do is separate your feet. So Brian showed me there should be about a hand's width of space between your heels, but your toes are going to be touching. So your toes touch, but your heels are about a foot apart. So that's going to have both hips really internally rotated. So what I'm going to try to do now is drive my heels up towards the ceiling and get my legs as straight and just squeeze tight and as straight as possible. And I'm going to try to keep my low back anchored into the floor, and I'm just going to drive those hands overhead. So I'm just really lengthening out through the low back, and you'll feel a lot of hamstring stretch. This is really good to increase circulation. So that's an example of what an ELDOA session would look like. What you would do with this information is this is a great way to end any workout. So if you think in a workout you may be lifting weights or using some type of resistance or running or jumping, and your spine is going through some level of compression when you're doing all of that. So it's an excellent way when your body's warmed up and your circulation's already going and your heart's pumping to do some of these positions and stretches to cool down. So it's a great time to then, you just did some compression on your spine during your workout. Now you're going to decompress while you cool down. So you can, what you could do is if you have low back problems, you could take the lumbar positions that we just did in the video. If you have more problems in your shoulder or your neck, you could take the thoracic portion of the positions that we did in the video. So more working with the mid back and the upper back. Okay, so those were the ones at the beginning of the video. The lumbar or low back were towards the end of the video. So you just get into those positions. You do 1 or 2 sets of 1 minute. 1 minute's a good time to hold, come out of the position slowly, rest a little bit. You could do 1 to 3 sets of 1 minute of each stretch or each position. So an excellent way to finish up your workout, cool down, and do more of your stretching portion. And you could really do them on any day at any time. Just use the wall, use a mat, get into those positions, hold them for a minute, and just try to really focus on being very deliberate and very intentional in the positions that you're trying to get into to properly decompress the spine, hips, shoulders. We went over all those things in the video. So if you have a question, please comment, please contact me. and look more into ELDOA. It is a very, very beneficial thing to alleviate pain, make you more flexible, increase your mobility, and get your posture better, and get the strength of your core and your back, and get yourself moving well. It will really, and the decompression aspect for your spine, it'll keep your spine so much more healthy to avoid pain in the future.